So a lot of these younger folks may be coming into hospitals, but with not as acute needs as what we were seeing in the past.
That said, Monday, L.A. County reported 48 deaths in the prior 24 hours.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal reports California lawmakers have now delayed indefinitely their return to work after some lawmakers and staff members tested positive. Roger Stone's attorney has again asked that he be allowed to stay out of prison a couple of months longer over the threat he could contract the virus in prison. The government has not opposed the motion to allow Stone to stay out of jail until September. He's currently scheduled to report a week from now. It was a violent holiday weekend in several cities.
In New York, at least 8 people were killed and 44 shot over the weekend after what was reportedly the city's bloodiest June in 24 years. NYPD's former commissioner is blasting Mayor Bill de Blasio, calling him atrocious for eliminating the anti-crime unit, along with the city's billion-dollar cut to the police department. In Atlanta, police say 24 people were shot Saturday night into Sunday. 3 of those people died, including this 8-year-old girl, when someone opened fire on her mother's car.
Fox's Matt Finn, Georgia's governor, has now declared a state of emergency. America is listening to Fox News.
Oral magunom, matana lom suman kumin healthy and lessness. Karingin kumniki matsaye nakshike sinting kinyen fashil klan masenge. Inwang takeni and wang napashali, matana lom suman. Akayakom is mongle ashosh kamofal esukumines pe vitamin nasum. Karingin kupsifena in niceness in tia apashali. Overpowered to kungom na yen, tia kalmotom, inflame, inwelum, eaknas na sien kumatakyan. Inaksafye akola. Arela emergency contact list lom, aroy nash mo yaknas nas kaonlo in lomsuman, nakarangin in jash mit masin lomsuman. Aro makuno minako ye aknas na sien kuam in nasnas aim safe. Nanakmanas, matana in lomsuman. Message saying e masin manyetlu, Micronesian Resource Center at Choice Broadcasting.
The Army confirms that remains found last week in Texas have been positively identified as those of Army Specialist Vanessa Guillen, who disappeared in late April from Fort Hood in Texas. Major General Scott Efland commands the base.
When a person of Vanessa's caliber and character is ripped away, I don't think there's any closure to something like that. But I know there is a tomorrow. And that's an opportunity to do what's right for what Vanessa stood for.
Specialist Guillen had told her family she was being sexually harassed by a superior, an Army private who authorities believe killed Guillen on post, killed himself as police closed in on him. Several congressional Democrats trying to renew their lawsuit against the president over the Trump Hotel in Washington.
A court filing joined by 215 congressional Democrats asked the U.S. Supreme Court to revive a lawsuit alleging the president is violating the emoluments clause of the Constitution. A federal appeals court dismissed the lawsuit, ruling the lawmakers have no standing to sue. It's unlikely the justices decide whether or not to take up the case until late September. If they do agree to hear the case, it's unlikely to be argued before early next year. Democrats accuse President Trump of profiting from his hotel business in violation of the Constitution's ban on federal officials receiving gifts from a foreign state without congressional approval. In Washington, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
City Council in Seattle trying again to tax large businesses like Amazon, approving Monday a tax that could triple the payroll tax on companies with many highly paid employees. 2 years ago, the city approved an additional tax on large businesses, but repealed it under pressure from those businesses who threatened to relocate. The National Hockey League and the NHL Players Association announcing a tentative agreement Monday to return to play this season. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Chili's introduces the new crispy ribs. Mouth-watering Texas-sized ribs tossed in country fried steak batter. Order your crispy ribs as an appetizer or a full rack entree with your choice of 2 sides. Each order comes with one of 3 new dipping sauces: the creamy avocado salsa, sweet Kentucky, or the sweet mango chipotle sauce. Chili's crispy ribs are available for a limited time only, so hurry in and enjoy a crispy, juicy ribs experience today. Chili's is on the 2nd floor at the Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, we do ribs like no place else.
Afterday, this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yep. Isn't that what you were about to say, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
I took the
every day.
I took the words right out of your mouth.
You did, and every time I hear it, my breath goes as well, sir.
Very good, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah. Okay, so here we are, another episode of Tall Tales, and I just thought maybe I'd go back through the script for Tall Tales again. I used to do it a lot when the show first came over here to the Point, but it's been a while. So I thought maybe it would be good to refresh everyone, including my own recollection of some of the rules of engagement here on Tall Tales, okay? So we start out with the idea Tall Tales is an issue-driven, fact-oriented, interactive talk show that invites audience participation. It has been the top-rated FM afternoon show in Micronesia. So we're fact-oriented, and here are some no-nos. Things like "they say," "everybody knows that," or "well, we've always done it that way," and "there's no doubt in my mind." People advance these things as though they add to their argument, but actually voicing those particular syllables only shows that the user is capable of making noise with his mouth as compared to talking. So don't look for an abundance of common sense at Tall Tales. Your common sense is what tells you that the world is flat, iron ships will never float, and that an object that is heavier than air could never fly. Common sense is to be valued, but not when it's a synonym for reverence for the status quo or timidity. While an instant and firm grasp of the obvious may occasionally be necessary, sometimes it's good to delve into the theoretical and occasionally examine the what-ifs. And that's really what Tall Tales is all about. Tall Tales is not a news program. I'm not here to tell you what the weather's going to be like tomorrow morning, or whether there's going to be school this afternoon, or who ran into a power pole on Route 15. What the essence of Tall Tales is to dig beyond the initial statement of the facts analyze, examine, pontificate upon those facts, etc., and quite often examine the theoretical basis of what has been advanced and consider the hypothetical aspects and the what-ifs. And that's what I think the real importance is, and this rush to change our election law so close to the election. It doesn't come under the common sense rubric. It comes under the hypothetical or what-if type of jabber that we engage in here on Tall Tales. Okay, so, and I'll be getting back to that in a minute. But for now, let's go to Zemi Ikladny. So what else is new? The Daily News does not have a local editorial today. They're advancing the cause of Tammy Duckworth. Yeah, Tammy Duckworth, a Democrat senator from Illinois. Duckworth. Okay, well, Tammy Duckworth has a pretty impressive resume. She's a former officer. Looks like pretty capable person. And this column suggests that she would make a good choice for Joe Biden's vice president. I was thinking more along the lines of, may he rest in peace, someone like Edgar Bergen. Now, Real Joe Cruz, you don't know Edgar Bergen
I do not, sir.
From A Hole in the Head. Have you ever heard of someone named Charlie McCarthy?
No, sir.
All right. Well, some of the older folks out there in the listening audience would remember that Charlie McCarthy was a puppet that sat on Edgar Bergen's lap.
Oh.
It was one of those kinds of
ventriloquist?
Yeah. Edgar Bergen was an ace ventriloquist.
Okay.
Yeah, so I suspect there are still ventriloquists around right now. But
I get it now, sir.
Where's your horn, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah, let me try this again. You know, Tammy Duckworth might be okay, Real Joe Cruz, but there was a fella named Edgar Bergen who had an act with a puppet named Charlie McCarthy. I would suggest that Edgar Bergen would make a much better VP choice for Joe Biden. Very good, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah. Now, this particular editorial is by a guy who's got some stripes. His name is Mike Honda. I don't know much about the guy, but I'll bet you he's a bad motorcycle. But, you know, what a handicap having two names that have meanings. Mike, short for microphone, and Honda. Sounds like the motorcycle manufacturer has decided to diversify its products. You got a Honda mic here, right? Okay, and then we go to the Post. Increase enforcement. Fines to curb illegal dumping. There's a top-notch issue, and here's how the editorial starts. Mamatlau. It's Chamorro for shame. Mamatlau. Mamatlau, according to Guampedia, is the code of conduct for Chamorro people that spells out how respect is practiced and how harmony and balance are achieved in the conduct of its people. I think you just shot yourself in the foot again here, Guam Daily Post. Mamatlau, according to Guampedia, is the code of conduct for Chamorro people that spells out how respect is practiced and how harmony and balance are achieved in the conduct of its people. The its people referring back to Guampedia. So I didn't know that there was a people on the island known as Guampedia. Has kind of a nice ring to it, right? The concept of shame in Chamorro culture, and it's interesting, they spelled it one way, they spelled it both ways here. They spelled it the right way, and then they spelled it with a capital CH ending in U. They spelled it the wrong way. The concept of shame in Chamorro culture ensures that every person, no matter what rank, has a part in creating harmony through, here we go again, their actions, right? Every person through their actions. We bring this up in light of the continued trashing of our island. Some of our fellow Guamanians don't feel mamatlau when they leave all sorts of trash. How about you, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir, I do. If I leave trash?
Uh-huh.
I would, but that's why I wouldn't leave trash.
Ti papa I trash bunis?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that, no.
Ti mala, well, like you know. Okay. Some of our fellow Guamanians don't feel mamatlau when they leave all sorts of trash, from dirty diapers to broken household appliances and beer cans out in jungle areas. I get a kick out of the household appliances, you know, the Chamorro archaeological remains. So you're wandering around in the boonies and you find a dead refrigerator.
Yeah.
You wonder, maybe I ought to examine them. Maybe there's a story behind this dead refrigerator. You walk a little farther and you find a dead washer and dryer. People purposely drive up to jungle areas to dispose of their household trash when they might be able to take some amount of time and gas money driving their trash to a transfer station or cobbling up some money for monthly trash service. This gross practice of dumping trash for others to clean up needs to stop. Illegal trash dumping is particularly shameful when people who go to beaches or go on hikes to enjoy the scenery often end up doing the cleanup of other people's mess. This is a priority our elected officials should focus on. We have said this before, but the problem persists. The current laws and enforcement have not been effective. It's time to change things up, make penalties tougher and fines brighter, fines higher. Like, if a person discards a cigarette, just takes a cigarette butt and just throws it down on the ground, how much should that cost, Real Joe Cruz?
$500, sir.
$500, right?
Yes, sir.
What if it's a king-size cigarette?
$575, sir.
Seems right to me. Punish violators by making them clean up some of the dirtiest, most disgusting, decaying trash that can be found in other parts of the island. And make the cleanup public on social media. Yeah, but what about people's right of privacy? And if you catch a violator and you make him do that, isn't that a personnel matter? If it's a personnel matter, you can't even talk about it. Any politician seeking re-election, even those who don't intend to stay in office, needs to leave a legacy to the community and the environment. Now, that sounds like a job for Kelly Marsh Titano, who holds herself out as the premier environmental wacko in the Guam legislature. So, environmental wackos, come forward, please. Changing the enforcement and laws on illegal dumping would be a good way to do it. It doesn't look like messages politicians issue for a cleaner, more beautiful Guam have been working. We need a mindset shift. Excuses have been made on behalf of illegal dumpers that poverty is the cause of their behavior. Well, then it's okay, right? Then it's all right. Daily Post says, we're not buying it. Poverty does not keep people from practicing recycling, reducing the level of trash they generate, and using less disposable items. It's time for tough actions to deal with the problem of illegal dumping. Yeah. Well, I have an idea. And you recall my theory on how to have good ideas, Real Joe Cruz?
Sir?
Have a lot of ideas and toss the bad ones in the shucks can.
Yes, sir.
Don't throw them out in the boonies. Yeah. How about if we set up a bounty program for illegal dumpers and trashers, so that if you could take a picture of a person in the act and turn that picture into the director of communications at the governor's office, Janella Carrera, then the government would issue you a bounty. And perhaps the bounty could be keyed to the fine that's recovered from the prosecution of the dumper. Maybe a constitutional problem with that, maybe not, but it's an idea. So, you know, when I'm out on the road and I see the car beside me, just pull up to the stop sign and give it this and throw his cigarette butt down on the ground. Who's going to pick that cigarette butt up? You know? So, and I do a fair amount of walking along the road. I see I wonder, it seemed like most of the people on Guam want to drink a soft drink out of a plastic bottle so they can throw it out on Marine Corps Drive. So if we spice that up and offered a bounty for pictures of people doing the littering, maybe it would have an impact. Expecting government officials to do it? No. Our village mayor, Rudy Montanani, is not going to be the mayor after the next election. I don't know how we're going to be able to tell, but he's too busy out at the demonstration carrying the Guam flag to think about such mundane things as catching litterers. And we know that mayors have the ability to issue citations. And I think it was the mayor of Jonia that actually issued a citation. There's only one ever been issued. And that made the newspaper because it's such a rare event. So therein lies the tale. If village mayors aren't going to use their citation power, and we don't have something like a bounty, then we're going to be living in a lot of trash. I bet, without even looking at the Stack VIP, I'll bet this is another Joe. And it is another Joe. Wow. And even look at my, yeah, talk about prescient. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Well, Kabal, you must be like a psychic mind reader.
Yeah, I am a psychic mind reader, or else you and I have a telepathic connection. Another
Kind of like
joke.
a Vulcan mind mode, right?
There you go.
Mind meld, rather.
Yeah.
So, Kabab, it just occurred to me, I could be wrong, but it seems that every time the Democrats offer some solution, it's usually the stick instead of the carrot.
Uh-huh.
Maybe they need to offer both the carrot and the stick. And, some leadership would be, whatever happened to the recycle, reuse, and reduce plan? I don't see too many people emphasizing that. And they got a majority Democrat legislature, and they're majority women.
Yeah,
so,
and they've got a couple environmental wackos on board too.
And you know what, Kabab, I hate to say this, but a lot of the women in my family, they're leaning to the left, and so there's this whole recycle. It's very much emphasized thing, recycle, reuse, and reduce. I hear it a lot. So I was just wondering, whatever happened to that? Did the older ladies that cared about that, did they all retire and leave the scene there? And these younger ladies, they're not so much interested in continuing that. Whatever happened to that?
Well, a lot of these things, Real Joe Cruz, sound good when you're talking about them, but to actually get out and do something about it, not so easy.
I know, right? So I think maybe a good idea would be to encourage all the leaders encourage recycle, reduce, reuse. Go have the mayors emphasize it, have the senators emphasize it, have a place to actually put this stuff. But of course, we know the problem is going to be once you got it, where you put it. Like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. But then when you do it, you gotta ship it off island. That's going to take money, right? We got the money. Does government Guam have the money to ship it out, and wherever we can ship it out to? Otherwise, it's going to end up in a landfill, right?
Well, that's where it's going to go. It's going to go to the landfill because the idea of recycling materials off island, I think, will never come back. The changing world economy is such that it just doesn't pay to ship empty pop cans to China anymore, and I don't think it ever will.
I wonder, is there... So it's not economically feasible for us to be in some sort of recycling partnership here either.
I don't think so. Another Joe.
Well, what can we say? I mean, people need to address that issue one way or the other. If it ends up in a landfill or by some miracle we find a way to ship it out, we still have to address the issue of it's got to go somewhere. So if they start a program and say, hey, here's where we put it. Here are staging areas, just like you have during all the natural disasters, the typhoons. We have staging areas, and provide a place for the people to take their trash and encourage it. And once you got a certain percentage of the population used to this, everyone's going to be looking at each other and basically shaming each other and saying, hey, well, why can't you do this? Why can't you follow our lead here and, protect our environment? Anyway, thanks for your time, Kabab. Appreciate it.
Okay, Another Joe. So we started the show off the way it starts so often with a call from Another Joe. Okay, let's take a short break, and then I'll come back and decide what to do with the editorials today.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title. when you absolutely need confidentiality in your real estate transactions.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are back. Still, we're wrapping up Zemi Ikotny right now, and obviously, the Daily News is not going to get it today. Today, instead of having a real editorial, they tried to ride side saddle with this guy Mike Honda, special to USA Today. And as far as the Post is concerned, the potential for a good editorial was there, but I suspect that the people, the offenders here, are the folks that would pick up the paper, read this editorial, finish reading it, and throw it in the boonies. So it's probably not going to be very persuasive with them. I would have liked to see the Post lay this straight on the village mayors who have the ability to write citations but don't. And I suspect that if you were to ask them, they'd say, well, you know, now if I do that, people are not going to like me, and I'm going to get the Atan Baba, and they might tell their families not to vote for me because I gave one of them a ticket for littering. So I don't have time for that. I've got too many other things to do. That's probably what's going on. So if you wanted to spank the mayors on this one Post, that would have helped a lot. And then, of course, we have the problem with pronouns. Here's the offending sentence. The concept of shame in Chamorro culture ensures that every person, no matter what rank, has a part in creating harmony through their actions. Here's how the sentence could have been written. The concept of shame in Chamorro culture ensures that all people, no matter what their ranks, has a part in creating harmony through their actions. So you don't need to use their to refer to one person, unless you really want to be politically correct, because that one theoretical person that you're referring to, well, you know, you can't use he because maybe it's not he, and you can't use she because maybe it's not she, and you can't use he or she because maybe that one theoretical person is non-binary. And you wouldn't want to offend someone by being politically incorrect. So stick with their. It's so harmless. Every time the real Joe Cruz and I talk about this, I ask them, isn't this the right way to do it? And you know what they say? They always say, hey, Bob, I'm not two people. I'm just one real Joe Cruz. What's this they BS? Oh, sorry, real Joe Cruz, my bad. So no blue star for you today, Guam Daily Post. Work on your pronouns. Okay, so from there we go to the card. And the stats for today for Louise Bora Muña, it's been 8 days since she was caught making a legitimate mistake, as you were, a genuine mistake. And I think May Habib is probably still trying to get to the bottom of the real story, which was how did that mistake become public? And as far as Tina is concerned, 23 days since she saw something that was a danger to the public health or safety, to the extent that she would have to waive the public hearing requirement for a bill. I think she's probably going to see it again tomorrow because she has called the legislature into special session, and there are 3 bills. Well, She got spanked the last time she called the legislature into special session because she said that calling the legislature into special session to deal with these 3 bills. And Therese Terlai said, you can't do that, Madam Speaker. You can call the legislature into special session, but you can't decide what we're going to discuss. That will be decided by the body on motion. So she learned her lesson there, so she's not saying what the bills to be discussed are. However, the grapevine suggests that they're bills dealing with the primary election. So I would not be surprised if Tina Rose Munya Barnes waives the public hearing requirement for those bills dealing with waiving the requirement for a public hearing on those bills. I don't remember if one of those bills is hers. I think one of them is hers, which is a really good reason to waive the public hearing requirement so we can get to the really important stuff right away. Really important stuff, meaning Tina's bill. So this is not good. This is really bad, and I talked about this at some length yesterday, and there's still more to say about it. And I'm going to spend a little time on that right now. We have one idea. This is James W. Moylan. What's the W for again, Real Joe Cruz?
William, sir? Oh, I'm sorry. I just woke up.
Very good, Real Joe Cruz.
Just woke.
James Woke Moylan. We didn't know that James Moylan was a wokester until he issued his pandering hate crimes bill, pandering to every identity on the island, some of which we never even heard of before. I don't remember if it covers, does it cover Martians, Real Joe Cruz?
I'm not sure.
I think maybe, I can't remember, maybe it covers Martians too. If you commit a crime involving a Martian with hate in your heart, the penalty is increased, yeah. So, Moylan introduced this bill to do away with the primary, and my analysis was, I put this on the card as Moylan versus Underwood, because I see this as helping Will Castro, James Woke Moylan's brother Republican, because the primary, if there were a primary, it'd be Underwood against San Nicolas. One would win, one would lose. One would advance to the general election ballot. Will Castro would run against one Democrat. But if there's no primary and both Underwood and San Nicolas go to the general election ballot, that means the Democrat vote will be split. Even yellow dog Democrats are going to be split. Some will vote for Underwood, some will vote for San Nicolas. All Will Castro needs is a plurality. He doesn't need a majority of the votes. So let's keep the numbers small. Let's say that 1,000 people voted. And let's say that of the 1,000 people, 333 voted for San Nicolas, and 333 voted for Underwood, and 334 voted for Castro. Who wins? Will Castro wins. The Democrat, even though over 600 people, here's the number, 666. 666. Yeah, that's appropriate. Even though 666 voted for the Democrats, Castro still wins. So that was my theory. And then I looked at a website that's really a go-to website, sports fans, Candid News. And this is what I found on Candid News. Talking about Joe San Augustine's version of election reform. San Augustine's version will cancel the primary election for uncontested races. These would include a Republican primary for a Washington delegate, for primary election for Democrat senatorial candidates and primaries in 10 villages. The remaining 9 villages, mainly in central Guam, were strongholds for the failed gubernatorial campaign bids of former Congressman Robert Underwood, who, by the way, is not my uncle. It's Ray's uncle.
Yes.
Just to make sure that set the record straight there. Okay, the remaining 9 villages, mainly in central Guam, were strongholds for failed gubernatorial campaign bids of former Congressman Robert Underwood, who is challenging Congressman Michael San Nicolas in this year's Democratic delegate primary. The move is seen as a way to give Underwood as much of an electoral advantage as is possible, as Republican supporters of Castro in at least 9 villages will be free to vote in the Democrat primary, since their mayor primary is not contested, will be free to vote in the Democrat primary for whom they perceive to be the weaker candidate against Mr. Castro in the general election. That's the old strategy. That's been going on ever since. When there's a crossover, people oftentimes will cross over even if there is a contested race on their own ballot, cross over and vote, say, in the Democrat ballot, voting for the person that they think would be the weakest candidate, hoping that that person wins the primary so that their Gazoo can knock him off in the general. So that's what the game is here, according to Candid News. The move is seen as a way to give Mr. Underwood as much of an electoral advantage as is possible, as Republican supporters. Have you got your 19th floor sound effect ready, Real Joe Cruz? Good. Republican supporters of Mr. Castro in at least 9 villages will be free to vote in the Democrat primary for whom they perceive to be the weaker candidate against Castro in the general election. Polling data suggests the weaker candidate by far would be Mr. Underwood. So San Augustine would do away with some of the primary election, the uncontested parts, in order to help Mr. Underwood in his race with Mr. San Nicolas. Now, here we go. Mr. San Augustine's legislation, Senator San Augustine's legislation, may be considered conflicted and special interest in nature. Mr. Underwood works for him in Mr. San Augustine's senatorial office. Yep. Yeah, so I looked on the staffing pattern. That's true. It's a kind of a token salary, you know. But it is true that Robert does work for Joe San Augustine. So I bring this up, and I bring up my theory. So the San Augustine bill favors Michael San Augustine, as you were, Michael San Nicolas. And the Jim Moylan bill, and they're, of course, both Democrats, and the Jim Moylan bill favors Will Castro, a Republican, for the reasons I explained. Okay, now the really important part of this discussion is this. The fact that I'm discussing it. That's what makes it important. This is the kind of discussion we should never have when we're just a couple of months from an election. We should never be discussing potential changes to election law from the standpoint of who will benefit from the change. That is wrong. We should never be having those discussions. Now, I'm not saying we should have everybody get a gag and say, oh, yeah, we want to change the election law, but we can't talk about who it's going to benefit. You know, you need my horn there, real Joe Cruz. That's not why we shouldn't be discussing this. The reason we shouldn't be discussing it is because it casts a shadow on the most important public function that we do in a democracy. The most important thing we do in a democracy is hold elections. You can't have a democracy. Well, actually, you can. A mob is a democracy. Our system of democracy depends on holding elections, and to the greatest extent possible, those elections should be beyond reproach. We should never do something to an election that would cause people to sit around and hypothesize like I just did. Well, Jim Moylan's bill really favors Will Castro, and Joe St. Augustine's bill really favors Robert Underwood. And this is not a rebuttal. Well, he doesn't have a chance. That's not going to happen. That is not a rebuttal. Not even close to a rebuttal. The point here is that elections should be sacrosanct. And if you're going to change an election, you make the change a long way out from the election. You don't wait until after the candidates have been listed on a piece of paper. It's too late. So if we wanted to change our primary election, we got time to do 2022. As a matter of fact, in the 28th Guam legislature, an extensive legislative reform bill was introduced right after the 2028 election. It passed and was pocket vetoed by the governor, I'm sad to say. Now, the fact that the governor's sister was on the election commission, probably just an interesting coincidence, but anyhow, that's what happened. So this is really bad legislation, to be tinkering with an election after the petitions have been turned in, after we know who the candidates are. And then we look at it and say, I want this guy to win. How do we twist this knob, pull this lever just a little bit, make an adjustment here, pull this string to help our guy win? That's what it looks like. And again, it's not a defense to say, Castro doesn't have a chance, so it's not going to help him much. And Underwood is going to wipe the floor with San Nicolas, so that doesn't count. We're not talking about candidates. We're talking about the process. And tomorrow we are going to show that in our properly constituted democratic island, we are going to make short shrift of the legitimacy of an important part of our election. I'm not going to go through the sermon that I went through yesterday about why primaries are necessary. Just put it this way: if we don't have a law requiring a primary, we're going to go back to the smoke-filled room. And the only people who will ever get on the ballot are those who march to the party boss's drumbeat. I don't want that to happen. Selfish reason. If that had been the law in 2020, as you were 2002, I'd have never gotten on the ballot because too radical, too outside the orthodoxy of the party. That's not what we want, folks. Okay, so much for Tina and her ability to spot dangerous conditions.
Are you or a loved one in need of wheelchair transportation? Do you have a medical appointment or family event you don't want to miss? At Access Medical Transport, they offer wheelchair accessible service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available at your convenience, let them help you get to your destination. To learn more about their wheelchair transportation service, contact them today, 646-6970. At Access Medical Transport, they treat their patients like family. Thank you, and be safe, Guam.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Agotnia. They're open for dine-in, takeout, and delivery services from Monday to Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call them now at 479-2652 and get your Mezcla fix today.
Okay, so here we are back again. We're still on Zemi Ikotny. I think we're going for the record here on Zemi Ikotny today, Real Joe Cruz. Next item on, I'm sorry, not Zemi Ikotny, but the beginning of the card. Yeah. Okay, next item on the card is Luis Borja-Muñoz versus unemployment. And there's an article in today's Post. In fact, it was a front page article in today's Post. Losing hope. Some workers hit obstacles applying for aid. Well, thousands have received their unemployment benefits. Tungar Ketty and his family are still trying to get proof that he's been laid off since March 23 because of the pandemic. Quote, I'm losing hope. The 23-year-old father, as you were 29-year-old father of two said, as he asked for help getting his pandemic unemployment assistance application in order. His girlfriend, Raquel Rivera, has also been seeking help on Ketty's behalf. This is where I believe the PUA feels the people who need it, Rivera said. He has been out of work for over 3 months. He was 100% affected by this pandemic, but because his employer refuses to help and register with Hire Guam, he does not qualify for his assistance. They have sought help from Ketty's previous employer, the Guam Department of Labor, the Guam Office of the Attorney General, the Office of Delegate Mike San Nicolas, the Office of Senator Luis Borja-Muñoz, who counseled Ketty by saying, if you make a mistake, just make sure it's genuine. I added that second part in there. That was, where's your horn there? Yeah, I just added that in for, that's the genuine mistake. Okay, so next we started this yesterday, Ryan Calvo versus Protehi Litection. And I mentioned that there are several chapters in this particular item. To refresh your recollection, Ryan San Nicolas is a Republican candidate. I haven't decided whether the cancellation of, I guess the cancellation of the primary would help Ryan Calvo, because Ryan Calvo distinguished himself by saying, local activists with anti-American sentiments on Guam are homegrown domestic terrorist cell groups which do not represent peace. That's what Ryan Calvo said. And he got a lot of comments on his Facebook page because of that. And the Republican Party took him to the woodshed and said, you can't, these are not Republican principles, et cetera. We don't condone that. We don't support it, et cetera. You can shoot your mouth off however you want, but we don't support what you just said. So Ryan got himself a fair piece of earned media there. You know the old saying, there's no such thing as bad press. So I'm looking at a picture of Ryan Calvo that appeared on the front page of Guam Post. So this touched off the debate. So you've heard my rants from time to time about the separatists here on Guam. The fact that, at least the way it looks to me, Proteji Latexan and the other, how many is it, 45 groups or so that supported, each of which probably has one member, really are the Westpac distributors for the identity politics approach to politics and society. And if we were to take the identity politics back a little bit, we'd run into a guy named Antonio Gramsci, who was inspired by the Frankfurt School, which I've talked to you about before, and was kind of the founder of the whole idea of identity politics. So the way identity politics works is this: no matter what the event, no matter what the occasion, don't be looking for facts and truth. The only important thing to know about any event or occasion is what group the participants belong to. There are two broad categories of groups: oppressors and the oppressed. The oppressed are groups like people of color, transsexuals, homosexuals, non-binary people, queer people, and on and on and on. Intersectionality means where some of the circles of identity politics cross. So when you have a group that advances the idea that only Chamorros should have a voice in the future of this island called Guam, there's no getting around it. That's identity politics. Now, we have this kind of unspoken rule here. It goes like this, racism, racial discrimination, racial prejudice, etc., is always bad. But when you're talking about Chamorro rights Chamorro rights to the exclusion of the rights of others, that's not racism. That's about Chamorros. It's not racism at all. But if one were to examine these protests, oftentimes under the garb or the guise of being environmental wackos, etc., the messages almost always come across as the same. And that is that Chamorros are the oppressed, and that the white American, especially the white male American, is the oppressor, and the embodiment of that oppression is the United States government. So when Ryan says local activists with anti-American sentiments on Guam are homegrown domestic terrorist groups which do not represent peace, if he had said homegrown domestic identity politics groups, I think he'd have been right on. So maybe Ryan's vocabulary got a little bit out of control. Maybe he's a little bit too, maybe a lot too zealous, very overzealous. Maybe he has a message. I'm going to come back to this right after the big halftime show, I'll be back in about 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam. 93.3 FM, and 104.3 HD3.
An election ruling from the Supreme Court. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The justices voting unanimously to uphold state laws that punish people chosen for the Electoral College who then choose to ignore their state's popular vote.
The current case stems from 2016, when 10 people chosen to represent their states in the Electoral College decided they wanted to go rogue and vote how they chose instead of following their state's popular votes. In a unanimous opinion, the Supreme Court held that states can punish or remove electors who do not stick to their pledge to vote in line with their state's popular vote. Writing for the 9-0 court, Justice Kagan said this, quote, "The Constitution's text and the nation's history both support allowing a state to enforce an elector's pledge to support his party's nominee and the state voter's choice for president."
Fox's Shannon Bream. The ruling comes as some states consider legislation that would grant their Electoral College votes to the winner of the national popular vote, regardless of the outcome in their states. The High Court has also let stand a lower court ruling blocking an environmental permit for the Keystone XL oil pipeline. And a federal judge in Washington not only ordering the Dakota Access oil pipeline be shut down, but also emptied pending further environmental review. The company that operates that pipeline says it will ask the federal appeals court to stay the ruling quickly. The U.S. likely to reach 3 million confirmed coronavirus cases today.
Average daily cases have increased 134% over the past month. Deaths during the same period actually decreased 39%, perhaps in part because the new spike is affecting many younger, healthier patients. But because fatalities can occur more than a week after hospitalization, deaths usually lag as an indicator.
Fox's Jonathan Sari in Atlanta, where Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms has confirms she has tested positive for the virus, but says she is asymptomatic. America is listening to Fox News.
Chili's introduces the new crispy ribs. Mouth-watering Texas-sized ribs tossed in country fried steak batter. Order your crispy ribs as an appetizer or a full rack entree with your choice of 2 sides. Each order comes with one of 3 new dipping sauces: the creamy avocado salsa, sweet Kentucky, or the sweet mango chipotle sauce. Chili's crispy ribs are available for a limited time only, so hurry in and enjoy a crispy, juicy ribs experience today. Chili's is on the 2nd floor at the Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, we do ribs like no place else.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
The Trump administration naming some of the larger recipients of payroll protection program payouts.
The Treasury Department is identifying a fraction of small businesses that applied and qualified for the Paycheck Protection Program. Small business loans created as part of a $2 trillion coronavirus economic rescue package. The average loan amount totaled about $107,000, but the administration is identifying recipients who got more than $150,000. Among those, large franchisees of Wendy's, Taco Bell, and other fast food chains. And businesses with ties to political leaders are also listed as recipients, including a company formerly owned by Jared Kushner and a firm invested in by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband. In Washington, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Police in suburban Dallas shot and wounded a man on Monday during a standoff at a convenience store where police say he held the clerk at knife point. The man last reported in critical condition. The Garland, Texas police officer placed on leave pending a review. Federal prosecutors say an Air Force veteran from West Virginia will plead guilty to plotting to hand classified information to the Russians.
Elizabeth Jo Shirley pleaded guilty to a count of retaining national defense information, which could land her in prison for 10 years. The FBI says the Air Force veteran kept intelligence information in a storage unit that she intended to give to Russia that could put Americans at risk. Shirley has apparently worked for several government agencies and several times held top-level security clearance. Shirley also pleaded guilty to international parental kidnapping for unlawfully fleeing with her child to Mexico. That charge would carry 3 years in prison. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Asian stock markets closing Tuesday mixed. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East-West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Another super halftime show here on Tall Tales. The real Joe Cruz and I can't get enough of it every day. So great. So I go from the big halftime show right back to Ryan Calvo. And Ryan Calvo's statement that local activists with anti-American sentiments on Guam are homegrown domestic terrorist cell groups which do not represent peace. And Ishmael Velez, as is his forte, finds a little humor in what Ryan got tagged with. Ishmael says, poor guy, Ryan meant homegrown territoryists. The autocorrect feature got the best of him. And then meaning people growing up in a territory. People growing up in a territory are territoryists, according to Ishmael. Maybe that's what Ryan meant. Well, in a way, I kind of hope not, because Ryan grossly overstated his case, but he shed some light on an issue that needs to be lit up a whole lot more. Where are we on the whole idea of separatism, separation from the United States? It's something that some of our senators would have you believe they completely embrace. As a matter of fact, Senators Nelson and Raging Lee came out with a spirited defense as to why they violated statute to go to a meeting of the United Nations, which and do it on our nickel, even though the statute would not allow for that. And their spirited defense was there for self-determination. My job is tomorrow self-determination. As though once you say that, it provides complete immunity to any charge of illegality or anything else. And I've explained this before, this idea of Chamorro self-determination, the Commission on Decolonization, it's a charade. Because what it's about, it's really the Commission for Chamorro Independence. It's not a commission about Chamorro self-determination. It's for independence. And I've explained this before, but I'll go through it briefly again. Statehood is not in the cards. The smallest, the state the average state has one congressman for every 700,000 people. I don't think that the United States Congress is going to look too much favor on admitting a new state with 160,000 people that would, in effect, water down their votes and provide votes for an extremely small area. The same, of course, is true in spades as far as the Senate is concerned. Even if we could get around that, states are usually admitted in pairs, one Democrat, one Republican. I don't know how the folks in Washington would view Guam. Probably right now they'd say, the Republicans say, oh, they got a Democrat full house over there. We don't need that. Now, maybe that's not the way it should be, but that's the way politics works. When Hawaii and Alaska were admitted, they came in as a pair because at that time, believe it or not, Hawaii was Republican and Alaska was Democrat. So there was a balance. That balance isn't there right now. Puerto Rico has the best claim on statehood, but if Puerto Rico were a state, it would have 4 members of the House of Representatives, and there's no question that Puerto Rico is dark blue. It's a Democrat jurisdiction. So you can see that the Republicans are not going to look with much favor on a state of Puerto Rico. So I could go on and on and on, but just put a mark on your piece of paper that statehood is not realistic. If Guam were to become a state, you'd have to set your clock ahead 100 years maybe. By 100 years from now, there might not even be a tall tales will be around then. As far as free association is concerned, that's a myth. You cannot. The United States is not going to be able to enter into an agreement, a treaty, with anything other than a sovereign state. So you can't go from treaty, as you were from territory, to freely associated state. You have to be a sovereign state, which means independence. So if Guam became independent and were able to enter into some kind of a treaty with the United States, that's the way it would be. As far as independence is concerned, I'm going to come back to that right after I have a chat with my friend Jimmy. Good afternoon, Jimmy.
Oh, howdy. Yeah, you've been talking about the independence. And would you allow me to put forth 2 cliches?
Okay. Jimmy, you are a cliche, but go on. Go for it, Jimmy.
I'm sorry. Could you elaborate on that?
As Jack McCoy would say, I'll withdraw it, Your Honor. Go for it, Jimmy.
Okay. Guam, or Guam, however it's pronounced, has about 300 square miles and less than 200,000 people. It's smaller than Rhode Island. And anyway, the 2 cliches. You got a lot of people here. You got several people here. They're big frogs in a little pond. And their tails trying to wag the dog. So that's for the independence. And then when the food stamps stop, what they're going to do? What's it going to do? Eat coconuts? Anyway, too many big frogs in small ponds.
Okay. Well, I'm just a medium-sized frog, Jimmy, so I don't fit into that categorization. But I understand what you're saying.
Well, at least someone does.
Thanks for calling, Jimmy.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, and to balance out the scorecard, we've already had another Joe, and now we have our Carl. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, Bob. Was chauffeuring my auntie around this afternoon, but I was still keeping up with your show. And I just wanted to call in and make a couple of points.
Does your auntie like the show, Real Joe Cruz?
What's that, Bob?
Does your auntie like the show?
Yeah, she likes you.
Sounds like a nice lady.
Yeah, she's 91 years old. She's our matriarch of the family, so she's really good. Anyway, I just wanted to make a couple of points. One of them, as with Dave Davis, Ryan Calvo is not really the point. The point is to make an example of Ryan Calvo on if you speak up. The unspoken message to the general public is don't speak up because, you know, you will get attacked. You will get harassed and all kinds of stuff.
I think the word nowadays is canceled, Carl.
Yeah, exactly. The mob will cancel you. And pretty much it's the same strategy and mindset that we're seeing in the States. And regarding what Jimmy said about, you know, how are we going to live, you know, if the food stamps are canceled, that is also irrelevant, as we see with other leftist movements in Africa. You know, many of those countries went to the left after they went independent. A lot of the people who became leaders went to Western universities. They soaked up this Marxist ideology and came back, and that's why so many African countries swung left after independence. But the pattern is with these countries that these social justice utopias, two big examples are North Korea and I'm trying to think of another one. Well, there's Venezuela, and you know, and there's a bunch of others. But you know, people would say, well, you're just choosing the worst examples. Yeah, but there's a pattern there, and that is that once the left is in power, it really doesn't matter how much the people suffer. It's totally irrelevant as long as the leftist elites do well, which they always do. You know, if the people suffer, you know, have to eat zoo animals as they're doing in Venezuela, or eat their own pets, that's irrelevant. You know, that doesn't matter. I've never seen a leftist regime say that our people are suffering. We were wrong. We need to give up power. That will never happen. So, you know, my view is that we could survive without the United States. You know, we could survive even if a single Spaniard, a single American, a single Japanese, a single Filipino never came to Guam, never touched foot on Guam, even if we were pristine. Guam would still be here. We would, you know, be living in, you know, a social justice utopia, I guess. And that's where, you know, the agenda seems to lead. Is, you know, we're heading back to utopia. But you know, if that's the case, then you know, the original Guam culture was a caste system in which there was royalty and there were the commoners, and the commoners had no hope of rising into the royalty. It was, and you know, that to me is what would happen. Since we're going all indigenous and we're heading back to pristine, that seems to be the logical conclusion, is that's where we're headed. is if we want to go all the way and take it to its logical conclusion.
Can you bring it back to Ryan Calvo, Carl?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I wandered off a bit. But my point with him was that Ryan is just being used as an example, to discourage people from saying anything, from speaking out. And that was just my thought in watching what just happened. It's as you said, the cancel culture. Anyway, Bob, thank you. I just wanted to add those few thoughts, and I appreciate being given the chance. Thank you very much.
Good talking to you, Carl.
All right.
So, Ryan Calvo made something of a name for himself. The old saying being there's no such thing as bad press. The Republican Party came down on him. So I guess Ryan's chore right now is what's called messaging. And a little tip, if you want to run for senator, you got to have a message. And I'll tell you what your message, this is not a message. Mr. Candidate, Candidate X, why do you want to be a senator? I want to help the people. Oh, that's really admirable. Why should I vote for you? I really want to help the people. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I could vote for you on that basis. What's your platform going to be when you're in the legislature? Helping the people. This is not a message. So Ryan, if he sat down and worked with it a little bit, he's not off to a good start because the word terrorism doesn't really fit, perhaps even with where he's at. He might have had a case of Bidenism there and let his crocodile noggin override his never mind that, but his message could be something along the lines of what Carl said. Do we really want to separate from the United States? Is that our destiny? Is that what we should be concentrating on in the legislature? So Ryan could take the exposure that he got from his hyperbolic remark and perhaps turn it into something if he were interested. Now, yesterday I got into the second chapter here of Ryan Calvo, which is Laura Souder versus America, and I'm going to have to kind of start over with that. And the title of Laura's column, which ran in the Post on Sunday, is Celebrating July 4th as Self-Determination Day. And then she starts out with a loaded sentence. There can be no peace or prosperity without justice. Now, I debunked that yesterday, and I'm not going to spend any time on it again. Going on to the next sentence, this simple statement really rings true today as the United States faces massive upheavals in all facets of life in the continent. The Wuhan virus is spreading unchecked throughout the urban and rural landscapes, from sea to shining sea. Laura ought to be a songwriter with phraseology like that. Yeah, beautiful for spacious sky. No. Where's your horn, Real Joe Cruz?
Purple Mountain's Majesty, sir.
Yeah, above the fruited plain. Yeah. And then she goes on to say the economy is tanking people. People are dying. Protests are swelling. And politicians are fighting. Against this backdrop, Americans geared up to celebrate the 4th of July. Now, I have to add here that we were just talking about the cancel culture a minute ago. And the cancel culture means that if you find someone who has an identity today and he did something that wouldn't pass muster with today's rules, today's society, if he did something 50 years ago or 500 years ago, he could be canceled. In other words, he's taken not down a peg, but taken all the way down to the bottom. CNN, as an example, ran a story on President Trump speaking at the Mount Rushmore, in front of the picture of these carvings of 4 presidents. And this is how they introduced their story. President Trump spoke from the state to the nation, standing in front of 2 slaveholders, Washington and Jefferson. So they canceled George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. You know, I think you can make a really solid argument that had there not been a Thomas Jefferson and a George Washington, there would not have been a United States. But the cancel culture doesn't care about that. The way the cancel culture works is you figure out what is cool nowadays, what's woke nowadays. And if you can show that someone a long, long time ago was not woke, then that person is no good. He's got to be cast aside and canceled out. They want to cancel Mount Rushmore. So with that predicate, I'm going to say this. I expect that there probably won't be a 4th of July next year. It will be canceled. So that just as in the French Revolution, the woke generation will reconfigure our calendar so that we'll go from July 3rd to July 5th, because July 4th celebrates something that was completely racist. That is the founding of the United States. That's the direction that we're heading in. And that's perhaps Ryan in his inarticulate way is trying to kind of get that point across. But Laura says, against this backdrop, Americans geared up to celebrate the 4th of July. And she goes on to say, the 4th of July activities are likely to escalate the pandemic disaster that will leave in its wake many more deaths and debilitating illness than we can imagine. More than we can imagine, but not more than guys like Dr. Fauci and all these experts could imagine. I think we were supposed to have, 7,000 deaths by now, something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, they were so wrong about all of this stuff, but they're sticking by their guns. So Laura says that will leave in its wake many more deaths and debilitating illness that we can imagine. This reality has surely dampened the celebratory spirit. And then she gets into the real bare-knuckle part of her column. Far less visible, but equally brutal. B-R-U-T-A-L. Far less visible, but equally brutal is the reality that we are reminded about every 4th of July. It's the painful fact that we on Guam remain a colony. That is really brutal. You know, this is such a the government here is so brutal. The colonizer's government is so brutal. You know, all of this, show me your paper. Well, maybe it is. Roadblocks, show me your papers, you're under quarantine. Maybe she's not engaging in hyperbole. Maybe she's being literal here. Yeah. But brutal is a heavy-duty word. That's Laura, you should learn the same lesson that Ryan learned with terrorism. Brutal is not a word that you use lightly. Far less visible, but equally brutal, is the reality that we are reminded every 4th of July. It's the painful fact that we on Guam remain a colony while we celebrate the independence of 13 original American colonies from British rule. How has it come to pass that the colonized celebrate the independence of the colonizer from its own colonial ties while remaining colonized? Well, I'll give you some clues. The government of Guam is the colonizer's government. So if you're not satisfied if you're not satisfied with the island of Guam's relationship with the United States, maybe the colonizer's government is not the mechanism that you need to use to change that relationship. And as I just laboriously explained, the only real relationship that's possible, well, there are two. The one that I favor, which is remaining as part of the American empire. Yeah, I said it, empire. Yeah, the United States is an imperial country. That's why Guam is a colony of the United States, to remain there and do the best job that we can to enhance our status within the empire. That's status number one. And the other one is independence. The other two are a hoax. They're a trick. So that instead of coming out and saying, we want Guam to be independent from the United States, instead of saying we want an independent Guam, we come up with these weasel words. We've been denied self-determination for all these years. We should have the ability to determine for ourselves. Well, go ahead and do it and tell us what you decide. Because I know what the Laura Souders and the Robert Underwoods and the rest of the separatist movement want. They want to be separate from the United States. So let's break here for the seventh inning stretch, and I'll come back to this.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois. Nobody in the ballpark, nobody on the street. Tall tales, Tumon, Guam. People in the ballpark, people on the street, talking about celebrating the 4th as Self-Determination Day. So I'm talking a little bit again here about this, the hoax that the separatists continue to perpetrate upon us. The so-called Decolonization Commission, which is the actual name is Colonization for Chamorro Self-Determination. It's not to decolonize Guam. It's for the self-determination of Chamorros. And I've went through this before. I've gone through this before. In order to get somewhere that Congress has the ability to do something, or in order to ask for something, the correct thing to ask for is independence, political status of statehood and free association are will of the wisps. But the separatists don't want to come out and say, we're for independence, several reasons. One, because a lot of people say not practical. Second, a lot of people would say, in fact, I'd say most people would say, no, we don't want to be an independent country. We like being a part of the United States. So the idea is kind of like the Frankfurt School. You You penetrate the educational institutions. You try to influence the media, and you boil the water very slowly so that the frog doesn't know the water is boiling and he's going to get cooked. And of course, while you're doing this, all of the separatists can work on the government of Guam payroll. They can work on the payroll of what they would refer to as the colonizers' government. If independence is the goal, then the way that Guam can become independent would be for the separatists to enjoin Congress to make Guam independent under Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution, which I would suspect that all of the separatists are quite familiar with. Article 4, Section 3 says, Section 3, second paragraph, the Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. So the Congress has the ability to make needful rules and to dispose. In the United States, the Congress has disposed of the territory of the United States in the past. The Philippines in 1946, July 4th, 1946, the Philippines separated from the United States and became an independent country. So separatists, how about being honest? Come right out and say, we want to separate from the United States. We want Guam to be a separate, independent, sovereign nation, independent from the United States. Congress can do that. But as long as we keep horsing around with this Chamorro self-determination, etc., we're going to stay right where we're at, which is probably a satisfactory solution for all parties, because the separatists continue to draw government checks while they're spreading their message, and those who want the status quo have what they want. So whenever we talk about about separatism and political status, my suggestion is always the same. If we wanted to really deal with that, we would have a vote. You could call it a plebiscite. You could call it a hippopotamus, and there would be one question on that ballot. Should the island of Guam become separate and independent from the United States and a sovereign nation? Yes or no? Because until we actually ask that question, we're just wasting money with the Commission on Chamorro Self-Determination and all of the discussions that we have on this. Now, if that were the way it were going to go, I, for one, wouldn't care who got to vote. If you wanted to limit the vote to Chamorros, I wouldn't care. But the fact that up until now that has been the desire of the separatists sends a really strong message to those of us who are not part of the group that the separatists favor as to what would happen after Guam became independent. What would be the status of the PNWAs? So,
oh, we'd get rid of all of them.
Absolutely. I don't want to use...
We'd put you in communities, like concentration camps.
Re-education camps.
Yeah. And if you're re-educated, then you might have a chance to work, the street or something.
Yeah. Cleaning up the boonies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of sends a signal as to what the status of non-Chamorros would be once Guam were separate from the United States and we had the Chamorro Socialist Republic of Guahan, which would be a government of Chamorros, by Chamorros, for Chamorros, at least judging on the way that the whole political status question has been asked. The way the question is phrased is this is none of your business. Stay out. Now, if you look at the words involved when it comes to Chamorro self-determination, that's true. You know, if one wanted to know what Chamorros thought about independence or staying with the United States, I suppose that you'd have to ask Chamorros. That would be the way you would find out what the Chamorro opinion was. But even that, as I've explained before, is a false question. Because let's say, let's take two alternatives. Let's say that we had an election, and the question that I posed is on the ballot. Only Chamorros can vote. 75% of the people vote no. We don't want to separate from the United States. Okay, probably end of story. Other alternatives, 75% of the people say yes. What happens next? So does that mean then that the Chamorro people would have the province to go to Congress and say, you've got to clear everybody off of Guam because we have chosen independent and we want to be an independent country? Is that what it would mean? How would this all work out? So if that isn't the goal, then the question is flawed from the get-go. So the question really should be, should the island of Guam be independent from the United States and subject to the control only of those who belong to that group called Chamorros? Okay, so it's getting late in the day. It's just about supper time, Real Joe Cruz. So if I weren't here, you know what I'd probably do? I'm kind of hungry.
Eat Spam, sir?
No, I'd probably drive over to McDonald's and drive through the drive-thru.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'd drive through the drive-thru.
You might run into our friend there.
Yeah, well, if there were a talk show that I liked while I'm, waiting in the drive-thru, I'd call the talk show. Jack, what drive-thru are you in right now?
You read my mind. I'm heading to McDonald's, and I got to tell you, Bob, I think you and I are the only one that calls it supper. I got to be honest with you. I think it's just you and I.
Well, where I grew up, Jack, we had three meals. We had breakfast, dinner, and supper. That's a Wisconsin deal, right?
Yeah.
Breakfast, dinner, and supper. And when I came over here, I really had a hard time because I'd be talking with somebody and I'd say, well, I guess I'll go over here for dinner. You going right now? Yeah, it's only noon. You're going to dinner already? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm at lunch.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I do have a drive-through story for you, but it's not about a restaurant. It's about the bank. Well, anyways, the other day I was going to the drive-through to one of the banks, and they have multiple lanes for the drive-through at this specific banks because they have two tellers. So they have two different lanes, and they have a lane for the ATM. Well, anyways, the rules of the road is if you have a single white line, that indicates that you have to stay in your lane. And if you have a dash or a broken white line, that means you could, cross over cautiously to the next lane. So, well, anyways, in the drive-thrus, they're all single white lines. Some of them have yellow, which is at the McDonald's that I am, but they're just to say that you can't, once you're in this lane, you can't go over to the next lane. But the same principle applies for the white line lanes. But anyways, the other day at the bank, and this really irritates me because it happens on the road too, and driving is my occupation. You have this customer in front of us that's straddling the lane, because they're trying to determine which teller is faster, and once they do that, they could traverse over and commit to the lane. Well, anyways, there's like 4 or 5 cars behind me and the other driver in the other lane, and this guy decides to straddle the lane. And as soon as he made his commitment to one lane, it happened to be the longest lane. I just wrapped around him on the corner because it was on a curve, and I beat him to the teller, and the person behind me beat him to the teller. So whatever strategy he had in mind failed, and I took a picture of him, and while he was there, he was flicking a cigarette outside the door, out of his window. Really irritating. And I'm thinking I'm just gonna I don't know what to do, but I don't know. I don't want to shame this guy, and that brings us to our next topic about mamalau. For me, mamalau was always used as an adjective.
Yeah.
So like when I go to a fiesta or to a party, you know, I come late, I didn't bring anything, you know, and they keep on trying to say, don't be mamalau, you know, go get some food for your mom, go get some.
Boy, go eat. Yeah.
Yeah, they tell you don't be mamalau, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an adjective. So when I was reading an article and they said shame, I said, wait a second, shame is a noun. So I never heard of it in that sort of context in Chamorro. Have they used it with you?
Yeah, that's a good point, Jack. No wonder I
Yeah,
didn't.
because I know it's a shame. A shame is not the same as shame.
Yeah.
A shame is actually an adjective. And I don't need to explain this to you. You're an English teacher, but that article really confused me. And so then I saw they got it from Guam Wikipedia, so I said, oh, no, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, yeah, I am at the drive-thru, and I just wanted to tell you that story and linking it to the mamalau portion. Another thing
Jack, you'd never say eat mamatlo. You'd never you'd never say the shame, eat mamatlo, right? I suspect there's a way to turn it into a noun, something like minatmolo or something like that, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, but I think what they meant is a shame rather than shame. So
No,
I don't know. I just read the article and I just glanced and but that's you know, that sort of thing. It's not important, but it kind of bothers me because the way we use language now, and how important language is to identity politics.
Well, and then Jack, you know, according Richard Leone reminds us that there is a modern version of mamatlo.
Oh, modern. I'm sorry.
A modern version, mullard.
I didn't get that memo about the modern version.
The modern version is mullard. Oh, you know, when I spilled coffee all over myself, I was so mullered.
Actually, Muller is the name of a person, isn't it?
Probably, and then you could also use it in a kind of an accusative fashion, like, you know,
True.
You know, I know I shouldn't have done that, but please don't mullard me.
Well, anyways, I just want to. That article kind of confused me, but you know, I'm not up to date to the modern usage of things, so maybe I don't know. But I wanted to also to comment. I also, because I was reading the Guam Post, I also read the thing about the trash situation. Well, and I looked at the picture, and you know, in the old days we called those kinds of goods white goods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're appliances and stuff like that you use, household appliances and stuff. So we call them white goods. So I'm considering maybe, or I'm thinking about maybe our buddy there, James W. Moylan, might be introducing a white goods matter bill to solve the problem. What do you think?
That would fit into James's MO, wouldn't it, Jack?
Yeah, it would have. And there's a crosstown buddy there, Kelly, could introduce a brown goods matter, because brown goods are the terminology that they use for electronics, such as cell phones, computers, anything electrical that you use at the office. They call those things brown goods.
Good points,
So
Jack.
brown goods matters, white goods.
Good points, Jack. I'm coming up to the home stretch here. I'm glad you called. Please enjoy your supper.
I will, and you enjoy yours too.
Thank you, Jack. So long. Okay, so we'll say goodbye to Jack. We'll head down the home stretch, and guess what? I'm going to have our Carl helping me on the home stretch.
Are you or a loved one in need of wheelchair transportation? Do you have a medical appointment or family event you don't want to miss? At Access Medical Transport, they offer wheelchair accessible service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available at your convenience, let them help you get to your destination. To learn more about their wheelchair transportation service, contact them today, 646-6970. At Access Medical Transport, they treat their patients like family. Thank you, and be safe, Guam.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Real Joe Cruz, did you say 66 years?
That's right, sir. 66 years.
Wow.
Serving Guam.
66 years.
That's a lot of years, sir.
Yeah, it is.
Way before I was around.
Yeah. Those were the good old days.
So do you remember when they first opened, sir?
I got here 57 years ago, and
Yeah,
Guam Savings and Loan had just finished the building they're in now.
Oh, okay.
And there weren't that many banks and savings and loans on the island then. They were kind of the premier savings. In fact, I think it might have been the only savings and loan.
Yeah.
Good reputation. Okay, so back to Tall Tales, heading down the home stretch here from Churchill Downs. And who do I have on the line? None other than our Carl.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for allowing me to ride the Ferris wheel a second time today. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in a bit about the potential big losers if we ever separate from America and our constitutional protections. The big winners in such a scenario would be the political class and their cronies. I mean, if we think we've got problems now, it's not even close to what would happen, because their political power would be vastly increased. The thing I am concerned most about is separation from our constitutional personal freedoms that have been won at a tremendous cost. And, some will say, well, we can just write that into our own Constitution, but that is something totally different. There's only 27 amendments that have ever passed in almost 250 years of American existence, America existing as a country. And it's extremely hard to mess with a Constitution, very, very hard. And it's that way for a reason. And, I remember after one of the Dave Davis decisions, there was some outspoken criticism about the colonizers' legal system. Now, bear in mind, this is a system that protects our life, liberty, and property, and has successfully done so for as long as it has existed. It's not perfect, but it has done a pretty good job. There are tens of thousands of people that own property, and it's protected under the property rights of the United States and that legal system. And if we separated from America, one of my concerns is that the losers, the pieds noirs, the outsiders, the settlers, it just opens up too much potential for mischief, for seizure of property by the political class and their cronies because of past oppression.
Hey, Carl?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to stop the Ferris wheel here for a minute. You've had 2 rides, and I got a guy who's standing in line here waving his ticket, saying, hollering, "Why the hell did he let me on the Ferris wheel?" So,
absolutely, I will listen.
All right, will you yield, Carl?
I yield.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then we have Phil Flores on the line. Good afternoon, Phil.
Hey, RK, I've got an e-ticket for 12 Tales Land. I want to use it, and I want to thank you for recognizing our 66th anniversary. And today's, one of the many topics, of course, is you're completely right. The self-determination is warped into a let's not be America, which I cannot back at all. But I will go back to the person who started Bank Pacific, Guam Savings, in 1954, my father, late-grandfather, Governor Joseph Flores. And in his inaugural speech this month, in 1960, he talked about self-determination, but it was never about independence. He served in 1917. My father was on the USS New Mexico in the Liberation Forces. So I just want to say thank you for recognizing Bank Pacific and letting us be one of your sponsors, and that's it.
Well, I appreciate it, Phil. Good bank, good sponsor, good friend. Thank you very much for calling, Phil.
Okay, maybe I'll talk to you soon.
So long. So, Phil Flores, one of the sponsors here on Tall Tales, 66 years. That's a long time. When you look around at some of the other businesses, how many banks have come and gone over the years? We used to have some of the big names. We had Bank of America. We had Chase Manhattan. We had First National City Bank of New York, which morphed into Citibank. We had the Bank of Tokyo of California, and a bunch of banks I can't even remember.
Do you remember that First National Wuhan Bank we had in Tumon?
The First National Bank of Wuhan?
They didn't last long,
No.
sir.
Yeah. When they did their advertising, it kind of went viral, didn't it?
You're right about that.
Yeah. So Bank Pacific has been here all that time, and if I were a horticulturist, Real Joe Cruz, I would describe the Bank Pacific business plan in horticultural terms. You got a lot of banks around here that talk about, we got a branch here, we got a branch there. Well, other banks may put out branches, but Bank Pacific, roots.
Deep roots, sir.
Deep roots.
Very deep roots. 66 rings on the trunk.
Yeah, 66 rings on that trunk. That tree with the deep roots. Okay, so I got just a couple minutes here before we start playing Real Joe Cruz's favorite song. So let me cruise through the Facebook comments here and see what I've got just to kill a little time till the end, right? I got Walter Gray. Good afternoon, Walter. Glad to see you on board. And Janice Wong. I think Janice was first, but somehow Walter got on the Facebook above Janice. I don't know how that happened, Janice. And we got Pam Duvall. Ken Brown, who says he's in Northern California, and he's starting a Bob Klitzkie Show watch party on Facebook. He says that he was at Anderson in 68 and 69. Wow. And I got Dennis Bensur, who's saying, wow, 1800 already? Yeah, Dennis, time really flies when you're having fun. Real Joe Cruz and I have so much fun here that we just can't believe how fast the time goes by. We're going to be back again tomorrow at 4 o'clock, 1600. So see you then, okay?
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. HD3.
A key Corona meeting today. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, to discuss whether to reopen schools